Hi, I'm Pete Wedderburn, Pete the Vet, and I've just finished doing my weekly vet spot on the Pat Kenny Show. There's always a few questions left afterwards, so we take this short time on Facebook Live to go through those. And at the same time, if you've got any other questions about your pets, please type them into the comments section and I'll get to those if I possibly can. I'll be talking here for about 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, the first question then.
Okay, so our first question comes from Gwen. My dog has been diagnosed with acute pancreatitis. He only eats satiety weight management food. How serious is this and will he improve? Very worried.
So, pancreatitis means inflammation of the pancreas, and acute means like sudden onset and short lasting usually. So acute pancreatitis means that your dog's pancreas has suddenly become very inflamed. It's quite a common problem and it can be quite serious. What actually happens is that the pancreas normally produces enzymes that digest the dog's food in the intestines, and then what happens is, for some reason we don't really understand, some of those enzymes leak from the normal duct system inside the pancreas into the pancreas itself, and so then the enzymes start to digest the pancreas itself. So that obviously causes a lot of swelling and pain and distress for your dog, because its pancreas is in quite a lot of trouble. Now, in I suppose 95% of cases, simple treatment's enough to solve this. And what we do is we withdraw food from the dog, because every time they eat food, more enzymes are produced. So you have to starve dogs, basically, usually for 2 or 3 days even. And as well as that, you give intravenous fluids to keep them well hydrated. And sometimes you give medication like drugs to stop vomiting, because often they are vomiting. And also you give pain relief, because it's often a very, very painful problem. So 95% of dogs that get this treatment, they're quite ill for a day or two, but then they gradually recover and they return to normal. So most dogs do very well. But the downside is that a very small proportion of dogs, maybe 5%, maybe more, maybe less, whatever, a small proportion of dogs get something called acute necrotizing pancreatitis, where the digestive process of the pancreas itself continues and gets worse and worse, and this indeed can be a life-threatening or even a fatal condition. So it's much more serious if a dog has that problem. It is very, very unusual. I don't even remember the last case that we had like that, but it's certainly something you need to be aware of, and you need to talk to your vet about this. It does mean that when the diagnosis is made, the first 24 hours are a little bit worrying, because you're not quite sure which way it's going to go. And even though as a vet you know that most dogs do absolutely fine, part of you always worries this could be one of the rare ones where things go badly wrong. In the longer term, pancreatitis is more common after dogs had a fat meal, or if they're fed some sort of high-fat diet. So the diets that you suggested, they're already quite low-fat diets. So probably you're not going to change things very much, but you might just learn that you can't give high-fat treats to your dog. I used to have a dog that had recurrent pancreatitis, and I learned that I could never give him treats like bacon rind or sausages or whatever, because if I did that, the high level of fat in those treats caused a surge of fats in his bloodstream, and that then caused a surge of pancreatic enzyme production, which then set off a bout of pancreatitis. But I would talk to you a bit more about his future diet if I were you. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Great, so our next question comes from Pat. Could you ask about prevention and curing cat mange and how to stop an adult cat licking the mange cream I put on?
Well, do you know something? I don't remember the last time I diagnosed mange in a cat. It must be over 20 years ago. So this is an exceptionally unusual diagnosis, and because it's exceptionally unusual, I'd be saying to you, are you sure it is cat mange? Cat mange needs to be diagnosed by taking a skin scraping and putting a skin scraping on a microscope slide and looking at it under the microscope and seeing the little mange mites there. And it may be that, but that's extremely rare. Much more common is types of allergic skin disease, where the skin gets red and sore looking, and indeed it looks like mange, but it's not mange. It's often an allergic type reaction, and that often needs other treatments, such as steroid injections or tablets or steroid creams sometimes. But really, this is one where you need to talk to your vet and work through it with your vet. It's not one that you can solve by yourself. Okay?
Our next question comes in from Alison. Is it possible to get a dog allergy tested? Our German Shepherd has EPI and was doing really well on enzymes and raw food diet. However, lately he's lost a lot of weight, even though his poos are still solid. We're wondering if there could be an allergy causing the issue.
Well, I guess very broadly speaking, there's two types of allergic disease that we deal with in dogs. The first one would be skin allergies, and indeed there are blood tests and skin tests that you can do to test for skin allergies, and they're commonly done if a dog is itching and an allergy is suspected. The second type of allergy to commonly affect dogs is a dietary allergy. In other words, allergy to some protein in the food. And while there are blood tests available to test for those, the consistency and the reliability and the efficacy of those tests is very much in question. And when I go to lectures about this topic, the experts will say to me, they don't work, simple as that. So the best way to diagnose a food allergy is to do what's called a dietary trial or an exclusion diet. So what you would do is you would give your dog a new diet the dog has never had before, and you would feed that nothing but that diet for 6 to 8 weeks. And when I say a new diet, what I mean is essentially a new source of protein and carbohydrate. So generally, for example, if your dog has only ever had beef or chicken, you might say, I'm going to feed this dog on lamb. And if your dog has had wheat or corn in the food before, you might say, I'm going to use nothing but rice. So you might put a dog onto, for example, a lamb and rice diet, and then nothing but that. And if it's a food allergy, then the dog, because they've never experienced those ingredients before, they can't possibly be allergic to them. You can only be allergic to ingredients that you've experienced in the past. So if there's an allergy causing the problem, then the new diet will solve the problem. The dog will start to put weight on again and have everything will return to normal. And you'd say, well, that obviously was a food allergy. I would say to you, though, that the conditions, the signs you describe aren't typical of a food allergy at all. And I'd be asking questions like, do you have what you said the dog has is a pancreatic enzyme deficiency. So I'd be asking, are you giving enough pancreatic enzymes, for example? I'd be asking, are you giving the right vitamin supplements that are sometimes needed for dogs with this problem? I'd also be asking about what sort of diet you're feeding exactly, because raw diets can be really effective, can work really well, but some raw diets aren't properly balanced and don't give the dog all the nutrition they need. So you need to double check on those issues. Again, as with many of these questions, the best answer probably is for you to go back to your vet with a list of questions. I'd always be saying to people, your vet should be able to answer all of your questions. You should come out of a vet consult with no other doubt in your mind, with no things that you wonder about. Your vet should be able to explain everything to you in language that you understand, so you know precisely what's going on. Veterinary isn't magic, it's not mystery, it's black and white science, and you should be able to get that from your vet.
Our next question comes in from Eric. Hi Pete, we have 2 kittens of about 7 months old. They've been indoors for about 3 months. We want them to be indoor and outdoor cats. How would you recommend we introduce them to the outside world? We're afraid they'll run away and get injured or not come back to us at all.
And that's a legitimate worry, because we know that cats that are kept indoors all the time, they do live for longer. They have because they're exposed to less risks, like traffic and like other animals attacking them and all sorts of things. So, I guess you do have a choice. You could decide to keep them indoors only, or you could decide to let them out. The downside of cats being indoors all the time, by the way, is that they're more prone to stress because they don't have such a wide range of activities compared to cats that go outside. So if you're going to start them to go outside, the first thing I'd say to you is I would consider putting on GPS trackers. Now, these are quite simple nowadays. You can buy, you get a collar that goes around their neck that's a bit thicker than normal collar, but that's because it includes a little GPS yoke. And it means that you can actually look on your computer at any time and see exactly where your cat is. And there's a number of different varieties of these available. They cost 50 or 60 euros, and then you have to pay a monthly amount of 10 euros or something for the SIM card, which is in the thing, so you can keep a track of the cat. So that's the first thing. A GPS locator is a great thing to put onto a cat. And the other thing is I would get a microchip coded cat flap. There's one made by a company called Sure that's really good. And what this does is this, when you set the cat flap up, it will remember your two cats and it won't let any other cats in at all. So it means that you won't be invaded by neighbourhood cats. But the other thing that these cat flaps do now is they record exactly when your cats come in and go out. So they allow you to monitor what sort of activity your cat's getting up to. And they also allow you to control, via an app on the phone, you can control the cat flap. So for example, to start with, you might say, well, we're only going to let the cats out between, let's say, midday and 4 in the afternoon. And then they're going to be kept inside the rest of the time. So if you use this kind of cat flap, it allows you to get better control of exactly where your cats are going. Finally, I'd also be looking at your back garden and looking at where your cats will go, because I've become a bit of a fan of semi-enclosing your cats. What I mean by that is it's quite straightforward to put up a slightly higher fence on the perimeter of your garden so that you can make it more difficult for your cats to get out of your garden, and that then makes it safer for them. It allows them to go outside and have fun outside, but without being exposed to the dangers that would be, going on beyond your garden wall. Things like roads and indeed other people's gardens and so on. There's a company called Protect a Pet, and they make and they install special fencing that's designed to keep cats enclosed in gardens, and that's certainly something else to think about.
Okay, and our final question is from Anna. Hi Pete, our 8-month-old Labradoodle is getting spayed next week. She hasn't come into heat yet. Is this the right time? And also, what is the recovery time? I'm hoping to bring her to an obedience class the following week. I know she'll have stitches for 10 days.
First of all, just a point, she may not have stitches for 10 days. A lot of vets nowadays use what's called intradermal sutures. That means that all the stitches are actually under the skin, below the surface. So when the dog is collected, the wound just looks like a line in the skin with no stitches sticking out, and that can work much more effectively because there's nothing for the dog to nibble at. But anyway, that's aside. It still takes normally 10 days to 2 weeks for a wound to heal, and so I would say to you, I probably wouldn't take the dog to obedience classes for about 10 days to 2 weeks after the operation. Anyway, is it the right time before the season? Different vets have taken a different view on this in the past. Some vets would have said, let them have their first season. Other vets would say, no, just get them spayed when they're 6 months of age. I think for a medium-sized dog like your one, 8 months is a good average time to get it done. I don't think there's any evidence that there's a particular benefit by letting them have the season. Some larger breed of dogs, we would normally now say let them be a bit older, maybe 18 months of age, but so they're skeletally mature before spaying them. But really, I'm talking more about dogs like Great Danes and Irish Wolfhounds, the really big dogs. Labradoodles, I don't think that's such a concern. And how it should be when you get back? Well, most of the time these days, vets would take animals in for the operation in the morning. They'd operate on them during the morning time, and then they'd have a few hours, let's say between midday and 5 o'clock, to recover from the anaesthetic. So by the time they go home, they're usually walking around, wagging their tail, quite happy in themselves. Vets nowadays give high levels of pain relief to dogs after operations like this, so dogs don't suffer from visible discomfort after operations usually. They're usually a bit sleepy for a few days, but no more than that, and they should be eating normally and going for short walks. I mean, I think if you compare them to the human situation, where if a woman has a hysterectomy, she'll often be pretty much confined to bed for a number of weeks. Dogs do remarkably well in comparison to that. Okay, so we're done now. Thanks very much for your questions, and I look forward to talking again next week.